Good evening, South Brunswick. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Board Secretary has caused notice of this meeting, including date, time, and location, to be posted in the South Brunswick Public Library and the Board office, filed with the Township Clerk, and communicated to the Home News Tribune and the Star-Ledger. Roll call, Mr. Pawlowski, please.
Mrs. Deepa Karthik? Here. Mr. Raja Krishna?
Yeah.
Mr. Ray Keener?
Here.
Mr. Mike Mitchell?
Present.
Dr. Smitha Raj?
Here.
Mrs. Lisa Rogers? Mr. Joseph Scoletti? Mr. Barry Nathanson?
Here.
Mrs. Joyce Mehta? We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Pawlowski. And now over to the approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Nathanson, seconded by Mrs. Rogers. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. The motion has passed. And now over to the approval of the minutes from the meeting of September 22nd, 2022. May I have a motion, please? Motion
Second.
by Mr. Keener, seconded by Mr. Nathanson. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Motion does carry. On to the report of the student representative, Rhea Krishnan.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today, the High School Student Senate held their second meeting of our year. Students discussed concerns regarding the removal of the Bridge program. They're interested in seeing what we can do to advocate to keep this program in SB schools. Our Fleet Committee shared sports updates. Students shared upcoming club meetings and events, as well as issues and concerns that the Student Advisory Board will be addressing with administration in their next meeting. On October 23rd, the Senior Dinner Cruise was a 3-hour event on the Horizon's Edge that took weeks of planning and coordinating. We would like to thank the staff and students who made this a memorable event for our 406 students while keeping them safe and on board. The class of 2025 and 2026 are selling t-shirts for $10. Students should check out their Google Classrooms for order information. On the 31st, Amnesty is hosting a free tea day in the library to raise awareness for human rights and to drink tea. Moving on to athletics. For boys cross country, the boys cross country team finished second at the GMC Cross Country Conference Championships at Thompson Park on October 22nd. The boys had 7 runners earn medals by placing in the top 30 in the race. The Vikings were once again led by Aiden Silva's 4th place finish in a time of 16:34.19. Next up, the boys will compete at the NJSIAA Central Jersey Group 4 Sectional Championships at Thompson Park in Jamesburg on the 29th. The girls cross country team finished 9th at the GMC Cross Country Conference Championships at Thompson Park on the 22nd. The girls had 2 runners earn medals by placing in the top 30 in their race. Nikita Mathija finished 4th in a time of 20:02.36, and Shreya Petty finished in 5th in a time of 20:17.96. Next up, the girls will also compete at NJSIAA Central Jersey Group 4 Sectional Championships at Thompson Park in Jamesburg on the 29th. Our girls soccer team just recently competed in the GMC County Tournament. They earned the 8th seed out of 16. They won their first round game against South Plainfield, but were knocked out by the number 1 seed East Brunswick during the quarterfinals. As of now, this leaves the Vikings with a record of 7-12, going into the state tournament on October 26th. In addition, Katie Bourne and Stephanie Macaluso made both the All-Red Division team, earning 2 of the 18 spots to All-Red Division student athletes. Katie additionally earned a spot on the All-Conference team, which is awarded to 18 of the best student athletes in the entire GMC. Both of these awards are incredibly deserving, and we are very proud of them. Girls volleyball participated in the Making Strides Breast Cancer Walk in Point Pleasant and raised a total of $1,940 to be donated to the American Cancer Society. This is their 8th year, and the program has participated in the fundraiser. The GMC seeding took place last week, and the girls earned the 10th seed out of 20 teams. Additionally, South Brunswick earned the Sportsmanship Award for the Red Division this season. This season, we also had the libero, number 4, Samantha Schneider, was named All-Red Division team this season. This is a huge honor, as it is in the top 10 student athletes of all teams in the Red Division. We congratulate Sammy on this truly deserved honor. The SBHS gymnastics team will compete in the Novus GMC competition on Wednesday, October 26th. This JV meet is to showcase athletes who are on the JV team or who haven't qualified for sectionals on an individual event. We have 2 gymnasts preparing for sectionals, which will be held on November 5th at Manalapan High School. Moving on to marching band, on Sunday the 22nd, the Viking Marching Band performed at Old Bridge High School. The band earned their highest score of the season so far, an 89.5, and took first place as well as caption awards for Best Music, Best Visual, Best Overall Effect, Best Percussion, and Best Color Guard. On October 29th, the Viking Marching Band will be hosting US Band's New Jersey State Championships at SBHS. The competition begins at 2 p.m. and the Viking Band performs at 9 p.m. That's all I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhea, for that very thorough and informational report that you just gave us. And over to Mr. Fetter, our Superintendent of Schools.
Thank you. Well, this is a great night. We have people in the audience. Again, we've gone a long time without students in the audience, or this many students, and they're so little up front here. It's wonderful to have you and your family, so thank you. And we're honoring them tonight, which you'll hear more about, for both their creativity as well as their exceptional abilities. So welcome aboard, and we have other people in the audience as well. Thank you all for coming out. I want to introduce our dais has grown, and we have one more new member to share, and that is Dr. Evelyn Mammon. Give us a wave. There we go. Dr. Mammon is new Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction. Even though she's only been official since Monday, she's been working with the district and supporting us in multiple areas, doing a fantastic job. So welcome aboard. Thrilled to have you. It's great. A few other things real quick, and I'm going to keep mine short tonight because we have more important things to do. We have a town-wide budget committee that has met. We met one time so far, 2 hours. If anyone is interested in that, we're going to be posting a video online for anyone to access. It is the full version of the meeting, so everything is very transparent to the public. The folks on that committee, it's about 42 people representing all facets of the community, from township, people that have nothing to do with the schools, seniors, parents, administrators, teachers, other staff members. Very good first meeting, and we've shared that with the board already, so board members, you should have received the video. And you, again, once David finishes making the complete version, we're going to post that on the website, and that'll be available. We'll do that for each of the meetings so that everyone can follow along what's going on. As I shared, we have a challenging budget coming up this year, and we're looking forward to the support of the community, as well as specifically these 40 people from the township, so it's wonderful. Okay, I'm going to share my bad news first, then no more bad news after tonight. If you haven't read anything I've sent yet, we are scheduled right now by the governor's office to have 100% of our funding for our Bridge Academy, which is our mental health therapeutic support for students, to be stripped away from South Brunswick schools. That is currently the governor's plan. That is what he's touting. That is what he has the Department of Education Commissioner touting, and the Division of Children and Family touting. I've said this last meeting, I'll continue to say it. We are not sitting idle. We are not sitting back. We are taking this affront to student mental health very seriously, and we are challenging back. We have a group of 92 schools. We have board members. We have organizations such as SOS New Jersey, which Lisa Rogers, one of our board members, sits on and has been helping us to coordinate. We are working with Garden State Coalition of Schools. Just yesterday in Atlantic City during the state convention, we held a meeting to mobilize. This is a very, very bad thing. It totals to almost $600,000 more cut out of the South Brunswick budget, and all of that money is currently spent with Rutgers Behavioral Health in supporting our most needy students with their mental health needs. That is happening to 92 schools scheduled. That is what we're being told will be scheduled in the budget presented by the governor to the legislation for the next budget for next year. Again, really bad, and I did have a quick chance to talk to Rhea before, and you're saying it's already being discussed at the school level, and we're going to mobilize our students, families, this entire township, and the townships and families and students from the other districts as well, and we have to do something to stop this. This is dangerous for kids. It comes at an incredibly bad time where all research talks about school-based mental health support. And the state of New Jersey has decided that school-based mental health is a bad idea. We shouldn't do that. None. That should happen somewhere else. And we don't understand it. No one understands it. But we're going to keep fighting, and eventually you'll see a chance to mobilize. You might have seen an email to sign a petition. While I don't know that the petition will solve the world, sign if you agree with the idea of keeping these services for our kids. And we'll be using everything we have in our toolbox to challenge the governor's office, Department of Education, and Department of Children and Family with such an egregious act against students and their mental health. As we were saying, this is kind of a decision by the people that are supposed to be there for kids that lacks humanity. And it's sad. But I'm going to get on to more happy things. Kids, I'm sorry. Little guys, I'm sorry you have to hear all that. Sorry about that. But you're safe. You're fine. Don't worry. Reminder to everybody. Now the good news for the students. The week of November 7th, no school. Whole week, no school. No school. We have great things happening in the schools. That's for staff, not for students. That'll be parent-teacher conferences. Will be on Monday. Then there'll be the rest of the time. It's really just schools are shut down, and we have professional development. And then all are off for Thursday, Friday for the NJEA convention, which is a thing that happens every year in New Jersey. So that's coming up. Mark your calendars for that. Another thing, just to parents, this is really for you. Parents that are listening, parents that are in the audience, you've heard, if you read about the flu, it's booming right now. And you gotta be vigilant on this, because we had, I think, Pete, 170 at Indian Fields? So 170 absences from the flu or other respiratory when we came back this week. So it's real, it's happening. And Greenbrook, where's Jody? You guys were hit with about 70 or 80 cases, I believe. 80 cases in your schools. Yes, that's more than 25% of your school. So it's real. It's important that people stay vigilant with this. We've sent home a letter today in the newsletter that kind of outlines some things you can do. I'm not going to read them all here, but fever, keep them home. Heavy coughs, keep them home. I know we were talking about this for so many years with COVID. Now we're talking about it with flu, but we have to keep talking about it because we don't want these outbreaks to happen. It's just not good for the learning or good for the health or any of it. With that, Reggie, Dave, am I set up behind me? We are. So behind me, we're going to do a quick video. We have, every year we honor former athletes. You all heard of the concept of the Hall of Fame. Well, South Brunswick also has a Hall of Fame, and we just honored a whole group of people, and we wanted to show the board and our community a quick video that they put together honoring this latest group. So go to the videotape, Reggie.
track and field star, Brandon Whitman. From the class of 2012, track and field gymnastics star, Lindsay Targan. Class of 2012, cross-country road track and field star, Emma Galvin. From the class of 2010, gymnastics star, Jessica Digger. Class of 2010, cross-country road track and field star, Sophia Eakins. Girls cross country, John. Wesley Cooley, Rachel Guard. And finally, round out the class of 22, legendary, the best way to do, Director of Athletics.
And that ends my report.
Okay, thank you so much for that report. That was excellent. And now we're going to go over to the most important part. It's what you're here for, right? It's the presentations. So we're going to start with the recognition of the 2022-23 District Calendar Art students, which will be facilitated by our Assistant Superintendent, Ms. Luckborn.
Good evening, board and members of our audience and those watching at home. It's my privilege to spend some time with you this evening celebrating the artists here in our midst. Mr. Mitchell, as the Vice President of the board, would you join me in handing out certificates this evening? All right, so I'm going to take you back to last spring for our virtual Joanne Kirkus Art Gallery, where artwork was submitted and representative of many different students here in our town. We're very fortunate to have such talented artists. But among us this evening are the students representing their schools last year from their artwork last school year that was selected to be displayed in our calendar. So when I call your name, I'd like to have you come forward. You'll see the slides. Our first slide gets us started. These are just some of the Bitmojis of our art staff congratulating and welcoming you this evening. And our first student we're going to recognize is displayed in the month of November from Brooks Crossing Elementary School. It's Dia Rajanisha, and her art teacher was Mrs. Kazar. I don't see her here with us this evening, but maybe we snuck in. Okay. I'm going to send this certificate back with your teacher so that you can receive that at school tomorrow. Wait, did she move on to middle school? She moved on to middle school. I'll take that and pass that on. All right, we're starting off good. All right, our next artist from Brunswick Acres School was represented in the month of June for her artwork. And we're going to show Anika Sahu's artwork here. This was work she did as a second grader. So come on up. Congratulations. Her art teacher was Miss Tiedemann. Next, from Cambridge School, we have Nirgun Singhal, who he was in third grade when he did this piece, and he is represented in the month of July. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. So I'll take you to the month of May and Constable Elementary School, and I do believe I see our Constable row is empty. But if Lathika Adi Gupala is here, oh, there, look, all right, come on down. Lathika was in 5th grade last year, so you're now in the middle school, but congratulations on your artwork. Her art teacher was Miss Kachelik.
Congratulations.
And I'm sorry, I want to go back 1 minute because Nirgun's art teacher was Miss Mallon from Cambridge School. So from Greenbrook Elementary School, whose artwork is featured in the month of January. I love looking at the colors. So much detail in the artwork. Mehtab Kaur, and her art teacher is Miss Kipnis.
Congratulations.
So Maisie Dunn, grade 2 at Indian Fields, art teacher Mr. Shizzle, and it was the month of December with that hot cocoa. Come on down, Maisie.
Congratulations.
I feel like we're jumping around in the months. It's kind of how the school year goes. It goes real fast once you get started. So now we're going to go to September, which started our school year. From Monmouth Junction Elementary School, Antonia Gross, and the art teacher was Miss Ward. We know that Antonia had a conflict tonight in another venue, of course, related to the arts. So we want to congratulate her, and we will send this certificate back with her classroom teacher. There's Antonia's. Great butterfly. And we'll move ahead. Chloe Chan, grade 7 last year from Crossroads North, and Mr. Castaldo was her art teacher. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We have another Crossroads North student. Again, art teacher Mr. Castaldo. Aditi Chagul, and she represents the month of March in her artwork. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Congratulations. Thank you so much.
Are you impressed that this is artwork done in a public school, elementary and middle school so far? Wow. I don't even think I could have chosen a favorite to be represented. So this Crossroads South piece was actually a collaborative piece, and so we have several artists to be recognized this evening. You'll see that there are 5 names listed there. These students had moved on to grade 9, but they were in grade 8 at the time, and they were working with Miss Padilla, who was part of Miss Dovis's art program there at Crossroads South. So we're going to begin with Kazia Abraham. Are you here this evening?
Congratulations.
Erica John Michelle. Okay, the next artist is Neha Man. Okay, hold on. Let me get this right. Manishekaran. Manishekaran. Thank you.
Congratulations. You're welcome.
Okay, next artist, Vishnavi Sivaraman.
Congratulations.
And the final collaborative piece was Zoe Wilshire.
Congratulations.
I really want to know the story of how that was created. Can only wait to see what you produce at the high school this year. The month of April, another Crossroads South artist, Tanishi Reddy, again, Miss Padilla under Miss Dovis's art program. So if you're here, come on up.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
So we move on to our high school artwork. Yamna Arif, grade 9 artist.
Congratulations.
Look at those puppy dog eyes. Another puppy, Jessica George, grade 10 from South Brunswick High School.
Congratulations.
Ryan Goff, grade 9 at SBHS. Mrs. Coleman was the art teacher, and this is on our cover, if you remember. And I know, Ryan, you might be watching from home this evening, so congratulations. More cover art. Zinni Christine Zhang. Really think I've seen some of your art somewhere else too. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
And the art teacher there was Miss McMillan. You never know how much time. I feel like we're in a gallery and you want to have time to process and really get into the art that you're seeing displayed this evening. Now there's South Brunswick High School. Matej Otslasvi, Miss DeWitt.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. Thank you, sir.
And our final piece of cover art, Aaron Chiang, grade 11 at SBHS, art teacher Mr. Chow.
Congratulations.
I'm not sure if everyone sitting back here can actually hear, but as the artwork was displayed, there were definitely gasps and comments of wonder at the incredible work that was presented here this evening. We know that the artists must still have this work on display in their homes and probably in a very special place. I want to thank our art teachers. This is the last slide coming up. From all of our schools who inspire and serve as role models for their students to really explore and share that love of art. And I hope that that's something that they continue to take with them as they go through life. And remember these moments where you received feedback and were able to blossom and really share your talents. So I want to congratulate all of you. I want to thank our supervisors, Mrs. Blair Eisman and Mrs. Kristen Laskin, for their support with the art teachers as well. And I really want to thank the board for allowing this wonderful artwork to take place here in our district. It's just phenomenal. So congratulations.
Just some really good news. I just realized our budget problem is definitely solved. So kids, bring your artwork here. We're going to sell it.
Auction.
And we're good to go. Really, in all honesty, who would not buy every single piece on that picture? Every piece. Just enough said. And to our art teachers who are able to make it in our home, wherever you are, as Suzanne said, the inspiration that you and what you're able to pull. I don't know if the students came to you knowing that they had that gift in them, but you've cultivated it, and it's exceptional. So when we sell their art, we'll remember you. I know, do you want to see if any board members have anything they want to say?
Sure. Anyone to my right want to say something?
I just want to say one thing. First, congratulations to the parents. You have little artists, and they are just amazing to see that such beautiful, beautiful pieces. I happened to go to Herman Trucking. They had a 95th anniversary, and I was asked to represent Mr. Fetter at the time. And in their brochure, they had osked students around town, the elementary students, to create art on the old timer truck. It was an old truck. And when I had gone and I spoke to Mr. Herman, the CEO, Jeff Herman, and his wife, I had the pleasure to meet her, they could not get over the ability of our students. And I told them to come to the art show. Because I said, if you want to really see amazing art beyond what these beautiful kids did in the brochure, to invite them to the art show. So I do hope they come. But they were so impressed with what our students can do. So I commend not only the parents and the students, but the teachers. Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Anyone else? Mr. Nathanson.
Just real quick, it's just year after year, I actually keep and use the calendar year after year. It never ceases to amaze me. And, Suzanne would remember, because she's one of the only ones that were around that long with me, that it used to be color, and unfortunately, the state, like Mr. Fetter said earlier, decided to change how we did things on funding. So now it's black and white, but it still looks fantastic in black and white too. So it's an amazing job, and you and your teachers should be very proud of it. So thank you.
Okay. I want to echo the words of and sentiments of our superintendent and fellow board members. Kudos to all of you, to every artist, to the teachers, to the parents who make this happen. You may not feel the appreciation that you deserve, but all thanks to you. And we thank you for sending your child here, for living here, and making South Brunswick excellent. I think Webster's dictionary needs to change the definition of excellent to equal South Brunswick School District, because there's so much of that here that it's mind-blowing. And I'm looking forward to one day seeing us #1 in the state, because we have the potential. We really do. So at this time, I'm not going to belabor you. Done? Okay, so our next presentation will be, go ahead.
Our next presentation, as Vice President Mitchell is going to share with you, is data, student achievement, testing. Getting excited, I know. We're going to give you a short window if your children do not want to stay for a testing report. However, you are welcome to stay. We do know students might want to get home, but we're going to take a 2-minute pause. And again, as you go out, know the appreciation you have from this community for amazing work. So again, if you're staying, stay. It's a student achievement report. If not, have a good night.
Get up out of here. Okay, and now over to Ms. Lutborn to start the presentation.
So I wish I could say that I had some spectacular artwork to come in this presentation, but Scott and I have prepared for you our required annual student achievement report. We do have a few slides to inform all of you of the standardized assessments we deliver here in South Brunswick per state mandate, along with how our students performed. So I want to bring you back and remind you of our South Brunswick vision and mission. And specifically related to tonight's report, the vision reminds us that our students are much more than a single test score. And for those of you that had been with us earlier, you know that we recognized the artists in our district, and we talked about our musicians and our athletes and our ambassadors at the high school as part of the student report. Our core values that came from our work with our strategic plan a few years back. As we consider these values you see on the screen, we will share results from standardized assessments that show some of our areas of strength and gaps in student performance. Need to pause here for a minute just to see the magnitude of what standardized testing looks like in our schools. On the left side, it tells you the name of the assessment, and then you'll see all of the grade levels that are required to test with a yellow X.
Just it's important to also understand, these are the standardized tests the state of New Jersey mandates. They mandate state testing as a result of the federal government mandating certain things occur. On top of what's on that grid are all of the local testing we do to learn more about our students on a regular basis. So students are, they're assessed quite a bit. But this is the mandated part that Suzanne was mentioning, and it's also as a result of the federal government, not just the state.
As we present data, you're going to see more information about these, so I'm not going to spend much more time explaining what each of these measures are. So our first group that we're reporting out on this evening is our WIDA Access for English Language Learners. Our K-12 World Language and ELL Supervisor, Tom Decker, along with his ELL staff, managed this test. They've actually started collecting the information needed to ready for an assessment that begins in February and runs for approximately 2 months. It monitors student progress in English language proficiency, and student results allow us to understand what students can do in 8 domains: listening, speaking, reading, writing, oral language, literacy, and comprehension. And I'd note that this is an online test. It is kindergarten through 12th grade, students enrolled in that program. Kindergarten assessment is paper-based, given one-on-one, and students in grades 1 through 3 do an online component, but they also do a handwritten paper-based component. Just want to quickly orient you to the graph in front of you. We are showing you here 3 years worth of data, the 2018-19 school year, 2020 and 2021. That was one of those interrupted years, but we still tested students, and the 21-22 school year. The scale score on the bottom is an overall composite of those 8 domains that I just referenced. To exit the ELL program, a student needs to score a 4.5 or higher on that assessment. And you can see that the majority of our students right now are in that middle bubble of the 3 to 3.9. And there are many variables here as to whether a student moves in and out of these different levels. It has to do with when they entered our country and at what grade level they entered the country and how fast they move through our program. Another interesting fact about the data from 2021 to 2022, 60% of those students were in grades K1 or 2. 20% of those students were in grade 3-5. So 80% of our ELL learners are living in our elementary classrooms. 20% in the 6-12. The next assessment we wanted to share information on is our dynamic learning map assessment for special education students. Megan Plummer, supervisor of special education, along with the special ed supervisors at each of our levels, work on this assessment with the classroom teachers. It's typically administered during April and May. It's not done all at once. It's done throughout that window of time. It is for our most significant cognitive disability students, and it allows them in a modified way to show their understanding of math, science, and English language arts. It is the replacement for the NJSLA test for those grade levels for these students. This represents about 40 of our students district-wide who participated in this, and the way that you read this chart is the far left is our English language arts performance. The centered bars are our math and science at the end. Not all students take the science. It's similarly aligned with the grades 5, 8, and 11, like the NJSLA. You can see that the range of performance goes from emerging in blue to approaching the target in red, at the target or advanced gold and green. So while not a required part to present out on the SAT and the AP testing, we feel it's important to show you the whole picture of our program. And so we have a few slides to share with you on how the high school students measured against us here in New Jersey regarding these particular metrics. And I'm going to ask Scott to jump in and talk a little bit about that.
So what we try to do is map out kind of the pre-COVID to the current, the post-COVID. And what's really neat about the SAT data is the students that took the SATs, you're generally looking at a few sophomores, but juniors are your big group, and then early seniors take it. If you look at the first row, the class of 2019, that was the 18-19 school year. That was the last full year before COVID. Remember, 1920 got interrupted. 2021 was just one pile of interruption, and 21-22 was not that much different. But in this year, our average score, 1254. Look at the class second to the last row, average score, 1251. So over the course of time, while we have a few varying numbers here and there, you're generally looking at a relatively consistent but very high consistency of students scoring when it comes to the SAT in South Brunswick. That was a nice number because while all the other numbers we look at are during the student's growth, this at the end of the day is the big assessment that helps determine what's next. And while not all colleges are currently using this anymore, you've heard of test optional and all of that, that's becoming more popular. I will tell you that a very large number of tier ones are still looking for this, and many tier twos are still looking for your SAT or ACT data. So again, happy to see that. So another look. If you look at the second column is our high school, then you break it up math and language. Again, you're looking at where a child takes the test. So for the class of 21-22, we get scores based upon the month they took the test. What's interesting here, and our students probably want this data, look at August 2022. That's kind of like the last end of that, right? Highest score, 1306, would pretty much, if that was our average as a school, would pretty much put us probably in the top 5 scores in the state and probably the top 0.001% of the country. Where it is now, we still rank very high in the state and the country, but a 1,300 plus on an average in a regular public school, that's pretty impressive. Only a few schools in the state have those numbers. But our students were doing that at the end of August, so just interesting to see. At the end of the day, the average is the average to 1236, and how that all comes to pass based upon when they took the test. Now I'm going to move to advanced placement. There's 2 numbers I always look at with advanced placement. 2 numbers, participation and pass rate. They are linked. I think I've shared with the board many years. If we want to increase the pass rate, we simply decrease who takes the test. And we only give it to students that we are positive are going to pass the test. I will tell you that is absolutely how certain schools do it. So when you look at anyone, if anyone like to do comparisons, look at the participation rate on top of the pass rate. If you look at this, 2021 to 2022, while there was a few students less, the participation percentage went up. Keep that in mind. The percentage of students who tested went up. Did it go up a lot? It didn't. 1.5, 1.6 points. Not a lot, but it's up. It didn't go down. Look at what we do here. These are just some of the bigger ones. Mathematics, you're looking at over 650 tests. Again, lesser than the year before, but percentage-wise is all about the same. Science went up, even though there were less kids. And language went up, even though there were less kids. The year before, we had some students who took the Chinese AP test. Just so you're aware of what that means, they did not take Chinese in our school. They took it somewhere else, and they were able to test here. If I remember correctly, that was, I think, all 5s. All the students that took the Chinese in our school got 5s last year on the AP. Just some more. You're looking at social studies. We had a drop of 40 kids, but we had more kids taking the business. Had a drop in art. Next year, we might see an increase in art. It really, those numbers are just giving you an idea of the type of AP courses we offer. I really wouldn't get too hung up on the number unless we see dramatic shifts. Now, here's the important other number. Participation rate went up. So did the pass rate. That's due to access. You want to keep opening the doors. Again, the tier 1, tier 2 colleges, they do look at what courses you took based upon what courses your school offered. If they see a school that offered 50 AP tests and you took 50 AP tests and you got pass rate all of them, they care about these things. Not every school, but for college bound, this matters. So this district invests in AP, and the continuing constant theme, higher participation with no sacrifice to pass rate. Pretty good stuff. Again, you could look side to side and see some went down, some went up. Microeconomics, I remember that when I saw that number of 54%. Like, what happened there? Don't really know, but it was during COVID. Now we're a year out, we're back up to better numbers. English language. Do you remember? Anyone remember? The first year I was here and reported out on English language, that number was somewhere around 60 students, but it was 100% pass rate. I know Jamie's in the audience, right? Jamie used to report that for the high school. Now it's next door over there. Michael reports that. But we're still at 92%, and we've almost quadrupled the number of students that have taken that test. That's pretty amazing. So kudos to our kids and our staff for all that. Lastly, this one is a look at 2 places where we've increased access purposely. Back to the AP Lang on the left-hand side, 2017, 41 kids. So wow, we've gone up over 5 times, over 500% increase since 2017 for a very minimal pass rate drop, very minimal. So just think of the number. If you do the math, the number. The year 2017, where we had more students in the high school than we have now, by about 200 actually. 41 students passed. Now let's use percent numbers, not percentages. 41. In 2021-2022 school year, 92 of 217, about 185. 185 students passed. Think of those numbers. Take that home. That is impressive. And again, AP Psych, almost double the number. You had a bit of a drop, but look where the drop happened. Isn't it interesting? It coincided with what? With COVID. Do we have learning loss as a result of COVID? Of course you do. Of course you. We're going to show you that. Of course you do. There's no bubble around South Brunswick to make it unique above the entire universe. Kids were not in school for almost a year. In South Brunswick, 70+% of our high school did not step foot in the high school for 13 school months. Not 13 months, 13 school months. So over 70%. So is that going to impact students? Of course. Are little kids going to have trouble learning at home? Of course. Of course it had impact. So what we do about that, of course, is important. But that's our AP, that's our SAT, and I'm going to turn it back over to Suzanne.
So the NJSLA is one test that has kind of stood the test of time way back when. ESPA, NJASC, now at PARC, now it's NJSLA, New Jersey Student Learning Standards Assessment. I want to acknowledge that there is a team that goes behind test administration here in South Brunswick. I mentioned this about the WIDA access testing, how they're starting to prepare now. We just finished the Start Strong, and we are beginning to prepare for the NJSLA. Each school has a coordinator. Behind the scenes, we have Michael Moore out of my office who works on all the data management to get us started. Maria O'Donnell, my assistant, supports us with inventorying test materials and making sure we have what we need. There's hours, and I can't underestimate hours and more hours that these school test coordinators spend setting up test sessions, checking student data, training staff members, and monitoring testing. And so I want to thank all of them. I know that that is not easy to balance with the day job. This test is for students in grades 3 through 9 for English Language Arts. It has scaled back over time. At the high school, we used to test grade 11 and grade 10. We test 3rd grade through 8th grade in general math. We also test our students in Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 if they're enrolled in those courses. And we also test students in science in grades 5, 8, and 11. I want to orient you to this chart that you see before you and help acclimate you with the data that's here. First of all, I think it's important to note that we're required to report this out within a certain number of days. It's 90 days of getting the results here in district. Unfortunately, at this time, the New Jersey Department of Education has not broken out their data into subgroups or shared it publicly. So we're not able to compare that here this evening, but we do have the ability to look at us here in South Brunswick. We are reporting out on subgroups of combined 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade of the subgroups noted there on your left. The next column is the number of students that participated in the test in each of those subgroups. And then across the top, you'll see that we are reporting out on English language arts here. And there are 5 levels of student performance. Level 1, meaning they did not meet it yet, progressing all the way up to a level 5, which is exceeding expectations. To be proficient, you are a level 4 or a level 5. And what you see on the far right, the light blue shows you that pre-pandemic spring of 2019 performance compared to the one just to the left of the 2022. It's the little bit darker blue, which shows our performance. And I think this is where we start to see some of the impacts of the COVID pandemic. In the very first, the special education, you'll see that 26% of our special education students in grades 3, 4, 5 were proficient on ELA. I want to explain that for our special needs population, we've moved and reported out that the approaching expectations, because we acknowledge that the students that need additional support in learning the curriculum need a little bit more to get there, and so we've assumed that they would be part of that on track to become proficient. And then I'll give you a minute to just look at the information. I know it's a busy chart with a lot of numbers there. Early on in my presentation this evening, I shared with you that we would be showing you some of the areas where there are gaps in our student achievement, and this is exactly what I was referring to. You're able to see that we definitely did see a decrease in the percentage of students that were proficient. Didn't necessarily surprise us to the points that Scott made about what our learning environments looked like over that time, but definitely an area for us to begin to peel apart what we need to do regarding curriculum, what we need to do regarding our professional development for our teachers, and how we need to customize our program for all of our students. The next slide's going to show us same orientation, but will address our students in grades 6 through 8 at our middle school level. You'll see a few numbers in red, and the few numbers in red do show where we saw a little bit of an increase in the percentage of our students that were noted as proficient. I want to remind you, and I know Scott has something he wants to add, that when we see this information, this is the bird's eye view, the big picture, but we're able as a system to look at individual students and begin to identify what we might do differently for some of our students that are falling into these subgroups. Come on. Sometimes we think alike. Actually, the next slide is yours, Scott.
All right, so on this slide, we're going to look at it a few different ways. What you're looking at, the first 2 rows are the South Brunswick 3rd grade, and the white is New Jersey grade 3 from 2019. Okay, that was the last year before the pandemic. That's what we're looking at. So if you see, South Brunswick was, if I add the level 4, level 5, we're looking at a 63% of our students fall into 4 and 5. And the state, 50% at that time. The grade 6, 2022, the next 2 rows, South Brunswick in yellow, New Jersey in white, that represents the same students. That is those 3rd grade students. Is it exactly? Of course it isn't. We don't know if some moved out, some moved in. Of course it's not exact, but that's the same cohort of students, same grade level. So then what we look at is, all right, how did South Brunswick do with that group of students, just to do some kind of comparative data? And we look at, in 6th grade, that cohort now shows a 70% in levels 4 and 5, and the state shows a 47%. Just play that out for a minute. South Brunswick in 2019 was at 63%. Those kids moved to 6th grade are now at 70%. They increased. Let's just say they increased by 7%. It's not really 7%, but for argument's sake, let's go with 7%. New Jersey, those same students were at 50%, and they went down 3% as a cohort. That's interesting to me. Well, it's interesting because it's actually good information. When it's bad, it wouldn't be that interesting. But it's interesting what happened. Those were the COVID years, but as a school district in this particular group of ELA, our students seem to fare pretty well in those grades of 3rd, 4th, 5th grade till they got to 6th grade. Is that really what it means? I don't know, but that is how I would read the data in that per se. Now let's go and look at 6th grade versus 6th grade. Not the same kids, same grade. That's now the purple. Purple, South Brunswick, grade 6. White, New Jersey, grade 6. Above that is 2022. The purple's 2019. So in 2019, pre-pandemic, basically the same kind of test, our students in group 4 and 5 had a 74% pass rate. 3 years later, through the pandemic, kids have been now through all the same grades. They're about the same. A little bit lower. This is good data. I am going to warn you, all the data we're going to share is not this pleasant, but this is the pleasant data. When you look at grade 9, it's a little tougher when you start doing that in grade 9. ELA, you can do a little bit of it, so you can do the same thing. Those same 6th graders in purple in 2019 are now the 9th graders in 2022. You can see that when they were in 6th grade, we were at a 74. The state was at 56. We in 9th grade are now at 67 versus 57. Doesn't tell you too much. We went down a little bit in comparison to how the state stayed about the same. Again, you take this for what it is. It's one piece. It is not even part of the larger puzzle necessarily, but it is a piece. So we take the data, we look at it, we try to interpret it for you in some way that makes a little bit of sense out of it. And that's what we have for you in ELA. So mathematics, this is now the not so pretty picture. If you think about what mathematics instruction is, it makes a lot of sense. That if we're going to see a dip somewhere, it's going to be in mathematics before ELA. That just makes logical sense due to the hands-on nature of mathematics instruction at the early grades in comparison to ELA. Just kind of makes sense. Not good news, but it makes sense. So here, I'm just going to focus on the right two columns. The furthest column, the 2019 column, versus the second column over. You're going to see a dip across the board. You can see it all dipped. Now, did it dip to the point of, oh my? I don't know. It's concerning that it dipped at all, but this is what we're looking at. These are the same kids, not the same kids, same grade level of kids performed better pre-pandemic than they did now. I will tell you that national averages that show dip far, far greater than this. In fact, some of these percentages are very small percentages. Doesn't matter. There's still a dip here, has to be addressed. So that's one area. This is now looking at our 7th and 8th grade. 7th and 8th grade math data, every year we remind you, is a little bit wonky because the kids start to separate out and they now become more tracked and leveled. So in this case, however, if we look at our special education students, that was an area we a lot went into that, but we kind of held our own in mathematics with special education. That was good to see. But then you go down the line, and other than one subgroup, you're looking at significant drops. And, that's problematic. There's all kinds of reasons to look at this and dissect it. What we want to make sure you know is that we do that work. We don't just take this and go, oh, well. And we don't just take this also and go, oh, no, the sky is falling. It's both. This is a piece of data. The way the data was collected, the way the year went, different things that are happening in kids' lives, the factors and the variables that go into these scores are far greater than the scores themselves, but you can't dismiss it either, good or bad. So you look at it and you try to make sense of it and use other data to then put side by side to see how this data lines up. So while we're not going to get into all those specifics, we want you to know we don't dismiss it, we don't hang our hat on it, we use it as a piece of data in a much larger puzzle. All right, algebra. Probably my least happy slide on here. So the way to read this particular one is you have two different categories. You have not yet met and met standards. Your two columns to the left, 2019 white, not met, gold, 2022, not yet met. You'd want the goal to decrease, not increase. But you can see it increased consistently across the board. Then you look to the other two, white and green, how many met the standard in algebra. And you see significant drops based upon the subgroup, but all subgroups dropped. So the question becomes, a few questions. I have a lot of questions. One, what do you do with those students? Just keep moving them through? Do you have to do other things? You have to assess them with internal local data and assess what needs to be done for those students. What's remediation look like? What are all those supports? How do we best do that? Good news is we have really smart people in the district that are coming up with all these plans and doing all this work. This is a little scary, right? And this is not good data. But what we don't have, which we still need, is we need more data from comparable districts and the state. They don't understand. You can't look at a piece of data alone and use it to any effective way. I think the first time I learned that for real was I was a principal in West Orange in the SBA, and what happened, if you guys, I don't know if you've been, who was working in 98, 99? Does anybody remember what happened with the SBA? They changed the way they scored from 4th to 5th grade, 1 year over 1 year, and the whole state dropped in ELA. Remember that? But if all you saw was your score, you'd be like bedlam. You would have thought that your teachers took a vacation the year before and that they just didn't teach for a year. That's how weird it was. So I don't know all the data I need to know what this really tells me. Did they change the test? Did they change the scoring procedure? I don't know the answer to that. But I can still be alarmed. It's okay to be alarmed. I have a lot of questions. Suzanne has a lot of questions. I'm sure Evelyn's going, what did I just do coming here? I don't know what's going on here. That's not looking so good. Evelyn's going to have a lot of questions. Our math teachers, our math supervisors, our principals, we got questions. This is work. This is why we get paid to do jobs. This is the job that we rarely get to do in the last 3 years, to dive into data like this to see what we need to do better. But that's what we have right now. We're at that stage finally where we can do this again. And I'm very excited to be able to spend our energies and time here. Just wish it was a little bit better data. I'm going to turn SLA Science over to Suzanne.
Thank you. I think it's also important to note what happens with all of the data when it does come in. And so we have many of our administrators, supervisors here this evening. The administrators at the building receive their school-specific data, as do the supervisors, who then start to make plans with that information. They start to look for trends. They start to look for where did we excel and where did we fall short. And so all of that work is starting to happen. As Scott said, we're in a place where we could spend some time looking a little closer at that data. This is the New Jersey science proficiency, and what you see on this chart is a New Jersey comparison with South Brunswick. And remember, 3 grade levels take this assessment. It is the end of grade 5, 8, and 11. Domains assessed are earth and space science, life science, physical science, and the practices are investigating, sense-making, and critiquing. And the way you read this, there are 4 levels of proficiency. So you can see from all of these assessments that we're constantly changing between what the scale is and what the metrics are, and then trying to make sense of what's good and what's not so good. And here you see that the gold and the green would be considered good, are proficient or advanced proficient. And then the near proficient means we're going there. It's taking a little longer, but we're on our way. And then the below proficient. You can see that in South Brunswick, our green and gold for the 5th grade, I believe that says 16% were advanced proficient on the 5th grade, whereas the state of New Jersey was 7%. And you can see that the proficiency of grade 5, 28% here in South Brunswick versus 18% for the state. You can see that the state, 42% of 5th graders were below proficient. And is that 22% below here in South Brunswick? You can follow that across. You can see grade 8. Again, we continue to be a little bit better than the state on this science exam when it's administered. The 11th grade one is always interesting when you think about students that are ending their time in high school, how they're doing on a science assessment at the end. Still, the state of New Jersey, 46% of 11th graders were below proficient on the assessment.
So again, it's another one of those questions. When they're giving 11th graders a test and half of them are failing it in the state, what's going on at the state? Like what are they doing with this data? What happens now? I don't know. Like, this is one of those amorphous tests that we get 3 times in the course of a child's career, where they may be in the same district when they took it in 5th and 11th, who knows? The trail of data, the comparative data that's needed here, the understanding of this. The reason this slide did not get axed out of this presentation is because we are mandated to give it to you. First of all, I would never make a slide like that. I don't even know what that is. Like, trees are growing in the forest. But again, I don't like South Brunswick comparing itself to the state, I'll be honest with you. I want to compare ourselves to like districts. So wonderful that we're in grade, in grade 8, we're almost 3 times the number of pass rate. Still only 11% though. So that's not exciting. So I think I just always want to remind us about this work, that we give these tests. We have to give these tests. I'm not confident the state fully understands what they're giving or what to do with the data, to be honest with you. So we try to do our best with it when it's meaningful. This is particularly not one of the more meaningful ones, but it is colorful.
I'll take credit for the colors,
Nice job.
not necessarily the data. Okay. And thank you, Dr. Mammon. The NJSLA science was a new test, so that does also give us a pause at that moment as well. So then the next one we're required to report on is to share with you how our students met the graduation assessment requirement. And it's the graduation assessment pathway, because there are several ways that a student can meet that requirement. So for the class of 2022, we had 741 students who graduated. And I would say that collecting and managing this information is done in our high school guidance department by our counselors. Michael Schiess, the assistant principal at the high school, has an important role in this data collection and monitoring. We are responsible for making sure that every one of our students, before they graduate, they've met the assessment requirement. And we are doing that work at the high school up until the end of spring to make sure that we've made sure that there's something evident as evidence to put forward that a student met that requirement. And so the counselors, the special education supervisors, director of guidance, assistant principals there all help us make sure every student has what is needed for that requirement. So 70% of our students met the pathway through the NJSLA, which you've heard us talking about this evening. That means they took the NJSLA in either ELA and math, or they took the NJSLA, ELA and maybe an SAT for math. So it could have been a combination, but at least one of their assessments was NJSLA. Then the 26% was an alternative pathway, which could have been all SAT, it could have been the ACT, it could have been AccuPlace or ASVAB, other assessments that we work to administer for our students here who have not successfully passed the NJSLA. And then you see some smaller percentages here. 2% of our students were unsuccessful in those measures listed above, the NJSLA or the alternative pathway, and so they went through the portfolio appeal process in either ELA or math. And that's administered locally, scored locally, sent off for validation, and that's one way that students could meet that requirement. And then you'll see another small percentage of students that through their IEP have met requirements through that process. So, we are also reporting out this evening on a brand new assessment that was administered to our juniors last school year, the Spring 2022 NJGPA results, the New Jersey Graduation Proficiency Assessment, another new assessment for our students. I want to make sure that folks here can be our stewards with carrying this message, and for those that view this later, there is no graduation assessment requirement for the class of 2023. So you saw us on the previous slide report out on how those students in 2022 graduated with an assessment requirement. Does not exist for the current seniors. But I want to show you on this next slide why I need your help in making sure, and we have communications that will go out on this, but I want to make sure that we're clear on this. Next week, the juniors who took that test that was later deemed a field test, where the benchmarks were established sometime during test administration, are going to get a score report. So seniors, you're going to get a score report, families of seniors, that is going to tell you that your student may not be graduation ready in ELA or mathematics. We did not create this report. This is the required report that was generated. So there's a lot of PR that will go out with this to make sure our families know it was a field test. It was the first time it was administered, but we are sharing those results with our families. It is mandated that we send these student reports home. Students took an assessment. They should see how they did. They should not be alarmed that they get a piece of paper that says not graduation ready. There is not an assessment requirement for the class of 2023.
So you all know what's going to happen, though, right? So we're sending out 741 of these, and you know how many questions we're going to get that say, is my child what? Graduating. And we're going to say, Michael, your school will be answering this question about 500 times. Yes, it was a field test. It doesn't matter. Parents should say, well, then why do you send it home to me? And we're not going to answer that question. It's just the way it goes here. But go to the next one because it's even more interesting.
But we will remind our families, because we don't want to just say this is a free pass for the class of 2023. They still will be held accountable for the attendance, the course requirements, the appropriate grades. There's just not an assessment for that class linked. Should we tell them now about the class of 2024? No. Okay. All right. So back to the class of 2023 who took this field test last year. Not pretty. Not pretty. Let me tell you what you're looking at here. Red bars represent not graduation ready, and blue represents graduation ready. For ELA, it was based on the 9th and 10th grade. I think it was the 10th grade ELA standards. So on the far left, ELA South Brunswick, 59% are graduation ready, 41% not. State of New Jersey, 61% are not graduation ready, 39% graduation ready. I don't need to read these numbers out loud. Take them for what they are on the screen, but you can see we're required to tell you about those subgroups. That's how our subgroups performed. The one that says economic on the far right are our economically disadvantaged free and reduced lunch students and students with disabilities.
So just again, to belabor this point and beat it to fully death, 61% of the state of New Jersey is getting a piece of paper in the next couple weeks that says their child is not graduation ready. I can tell you, when you do a test analysis and you find an abnormally, out of whack number on a question, you have to decide if that was it the question's fault or the learner's fault. What does it say when 61% of a state, by the way, the number one state in the country, right? Let's not forget that. We like to tout that when it's good for us. 61% families and students are getting a letter in the mail that says, you're not graduation ready. And instead of addressing that issue, we're just handing them out and moving on. That's what we're dealing with right now in the state of New Jersey.
It's perfectly timed. 8 months before graduation, we're doing college apps right now, right? To get that message. Sorry. All right, let's take a look at how we did as a state and South Brunswick on the math. So I'm not at this one, 75% of our students on this test in math showed that they were graduation ready, compared to the 49% of the state. Just leave it there for a minute for you to just take a glimpse. Thank you, Lisa. The subgroups are actually South Brunswick. NJDOE has not released subgroups yet. In case there were any questions, the SWD at the end is our students with disabilities, our special education population. So given this was a field test, given families will see results, and we just wanted to make sure that you were all aware of what the big picture data looked like for us here in South Brunswick and for the state. It'll be interesting to see when the state does publish their subgroups as well, to see where there are some similarities or differences. All right, preview for the class of 2024, those of you here and at home watching. What we know today is they planned to re-administer, it's on the testing schedule for this school year. The graduation assessment requirement will return. There will be multiple pathways, just like for the class of 2022. March 13th to 17th will be when our juniors sit for the NJGPA again, with a makeup week the following week. Students must participate in the NJGPA to open other pathways. So all students need to sit for that assessment to be allowed to show competency on a different assessment if they are unsuccessful on the GPA. We'll keep our families informed as best we can when information comes from the DOE. I look to Mike Sheese over there at the high school. We'll make sure, just like with the NJGPA for our juniors, we send out appropriate messages so that people are informed and aware of the latest information and how this impacts graduation. We are also required, as part of our annual achievement, after we share data with you, to be able to explain some of the things that we have in place to assist our students in being as successful as they can through their studies. And so this slide highlights some of our programs currently in place and some of the strategies we use, K-5, I'm not going to read every slide, but I'll just, for those of you that may not be able to see it, some of the highlights are our K-12 in-class support and in-class resource programming for our special education students. We have offered summer intervention. The Ready to Rise summer program was offered to students in first grade this past summer. Our elementary intervention team is a district team that supports at the elementary level in ELA and math. Our middle school instructional support model continues to thrive, one that is funded currently through ESSER grants, provides additional intervention in ELA and math for every grade level with a push-in support model. High school did some amazing work this summer in offering some credit recovery and some additional summer programming for students. One of the best uses of ESSER funding was we provided transportation in the summer for the programs that are being mentioned here. Strategies, we continue to use digital tools. I'd highlight the writing workshop model at our middle schools. We have consultants on site working with us on that. We have our SCL universal screening tool called the DESA. So we have many local assessments we use to gauge where a student is with their development in ELA or math. We are now using one for our social emotional learning. It's called the DESA Mini. Teachers administer that. It has 8 questions. It allows us to take a look at the CASEL competencies. So we're excited to have that opportunity for our students. And so I mentioned Thank you, Dr. Mann. So I think there was just a question about multisensory reading that is utilized as one of our interventions. And so more specifically, those were our general programs and strategies, but we felt it important to share with you how we are really approaching this work. So I mentioned what's happening with the data, who gets that information, and what they then do with it. But in addition, to the administrators and the supervisors, the interventionists at the various levels and the special education teachers also get that information and look at it for the students sitting before them. As Scott mentioned, it's not just the one standardized measure. In addition, we use the local assessments, we use their work samples, we use the daily performance on tasks, we use all of that for the picture of a learner and how we program. And so we individualize it and we really target exactly what needs to be done. So for example, if a student is struggling with the basics of reading, we know we need to go back and work on letters and sounds and phonemic awareness to develop and strengthen that. One example is in our 3 elementary Title I schools. So that was Greenbrook, Brunswick, Acres, and Constable. We used our ESSA grant, which is a federal grant. We used that money to bring foundations to whole classes of kindergarten and first grade teachers and are supporting and coaching them this school year. Previously, that existed in our K-1 classrooms, but for a small percentage of the class. So our teachers in all 7 buildings had been trained and are using that, but we expanded its use to be very specific. We have clustered student support that happens at the middle school with the instructional support teachers that push in. It also happens at the elementary level where our reading specialists, our math specialists, and our district interventionists push in and support in classrooms with groups of students. We continue to explore and expand program opportunities for students, making sure they're in as many of the programs that we provide that will make a difference and impact on their learning. We're very deliberate. We make sure that it's sustained. And the final thing, a shift for us has really been We learned this at our leadership retreat this summer, where we went back and we said that we have teachers that are new to the profession that have only taught in the pandemic or on a screen. And so recognizing that, acknowledging that, and developing plans to support them is part of the teacher support that in the end will have an impact on the students in those classrooms. And so while we talk about the students and helping them with their learning, we also have to bring along our teaching staff to support those students as well. So this is the part where we segue into our goals. So we'll keep going with our district goals. We thought, while this was a lot of information talking about our student achievement results and our data and our programming, that logically to really show the board and the community at large how our goals are influenced by what we know about our district. So we have 3 goals. I'm going to start with the first one, and then I'm going to turn it over to Scott for the equity goal. These are not new. These are our initiatives that have been on our plates since our strategic plan, but continue to be refined as our needs shift and change. And so the first one is the strategic plan continued implementation, student and staff wellness. And so the goal here, intentional practices that will allow the social emotional needs of our school community members to be incrementally addressed and aligned with our district theme. And these are our action steps that we see happening under this. And so just opportunities for staff to acknowledge and then address their own well-being through professional development or independent study. And I'd cite 2 examples right now. This past summer in July, during our leadership retreat, we had a day that was focused on this. We had a keynote speaker. George Scott came and spoke to us about taking care of ourselves as a leadership team. You can't pour from an empty cup, and how we need to move forward with taking care of ourselves so we can take care of others. In addition, our upcoming November PD days, Scott mentioned earlier on in our meeting this evening that we would be having no students, but staff would be here. Some of those days are dedicated to that work as well. The second point there is the DESA, which I talked about as one of our strategies. It is a universal screen, 8 questions. It's strength-based. It's for all elementary students, and it's helping us identify students' strengths in self-awareness, self-management, relationship skills, responsible decision-making, social awareness. And so we will be working on that with our teachers. Actually, the early release day, not early release, the PD days coming up in November, there's some time for teachers to get to know that tool and use that information. So we're excited about that. And it would be available for expansion for some of our middle school. It's just not going to be used as a universal screening, meaning for all students. We might find some students that we would use that tool with. And then finally, sorry, go ahead.
Not everybody knows up here or at home who George Scott is. Maybe give a real quick resume how good that session is, please.
Sure. George Scott formerly was our Director of Student Services here in South Brunswick. He is part of the New Jersey Traumatic Coalition, right? Traumatic Loss Coalition. Somebody who was a mentor to me as I was learning our student support teams and INRS process. Very charismatic in his speaking, but also really inspiring in reminding us that we need to take care of ourselves. So we're excited. He's actually coming back to work with our staff on several occasions this upcoming school year. So really excited about that. Thanks, Barry. And then the final one here under student and staff wellness, you heard Scott talk about it in his superintendent's report and the initiatives here. South Brunswick really fighting back to try to maintain our school-based youth services for our students at the secondary level, for sure.
I'll make this quick. when you looked at the results of the student data, what you saw was the disaggregated data shows that our subgroups are not performing equal, right? We have to get to the bottom of this in a way that makes an impact. Part of the way to do that is going to be to work with the state. In this case, and the reason I'm willing to work with the state on this, to be honest, is because they hired the right person, Eddie Fergus, to do this work for them. And we also put out a request for proposal to work with someone who will help us with this. We've done some work with the data, but we have a lot more work to do with that. And in speaking with Dr. Fergus, he did share with us that the first thing he's going to be asking us to do is to gather the data we started gathering last year. And so we're going to put a little pause on that, wait till we get from him exactly what we're looking for, and then put that together so that we can get to the disproportionality issues that you can see, till we can really start attacking these issues that will address a lot of what we saw with our learning loss in all subgroups, but certainly the disproportionality has expanded further. So I'm going to leave it at that. And our last goal is not there. Hold on a minute. Oh, reminder, sorry. I showed you these already. Remember, this equity goal is year 2 of the goal, but these are just the ways in which we're going to collect data: elementary level, middle level. It's both academic and non-academic, if you remember, and we just were identifying where we would get that data from. But our last goal is, you can't give up on this. You know, no matter what else we do, the world keeps going. Smitha just sent us a very unfortunate email the other night about another school shooting. You might have read about or heard about that one. The sad part is it's to the point of common where another school shooting and we move on. And that's just so sad. So while all the work we do is not about school shootings, of course, that is the one that gets people. So Jim Conroy, I think he's here. I think he's up. Oh, no, he's here. Here he is. Put this together with us, works with the principals and the admin council. And we have some big things going on. We changed the way that we manage who is signed into what buildings that we're rolling out, and we'll get used to that. Jamie's leading that work, Jamie Bomer. And the other big deal that's going to come down the pike is this concept of reunification. What happens in those really oft possible things that could happen? How do we manage that? And what is the software, the app product that exists that makes that far more manageable than it once was? So that's kind of where we are. We want to put that up there and make sure the community and the board understands, yes, we have a lot of work to do with the academics, but we cannot give up on the idea of safety and security. And that does conclude our report, and I'm sure there's no questions, so we can move on to whatever's next.
Any questions?
Mike, do you want me to do that as I see them, or do you want to?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Is that easy?
Yeah, that's
Whatever.
good. That works.
Oh. All right, Lisa, you're up.
I'm going to go last.
Yeah.
No, sorry.
Susan, thank you for the detailed presentation. There was a lot to absorb. So I'm going to request you to send me this presentation, because I think I can only do justice to the questions that I have if I read it once more. So that's number one. The second thing, I did notice very early on in the presentation that you had the ELL data up, and you also made a remark that it depends on when these students came to our country. So does that mean that the ELL data is only representative of a certain section of the society that is taking that exam, or is it for all of the students? Because if I remember the first slide that I saw in which you had the X marks, I did notice that ELL was grade kindergarten through 12, if I'm not mistaken, right? Is that right?
Yes. It was all students in grade K through 12 who are in our English language learner program. So what happens is when a student arrives new to the country, they are assessed if English is not their primary language, and would then be eligible for the program. Some students continue in the program for consecutive years before they exit the program, using that assessment as one of the indicators that they've mastered enough of the English language to then learn the English, math, and science without additional supports.
Okay. So that was my first question. The second question I
Deepa,
had-
there's about 300 students that were part of our student population that were ELL learners in the year that I presented.
Okay, thank you. And of course, once I read the presentation once more, I will have some questions. The way I'll do it is I will direct the questions through the curriculum committee so that you see that there and it's like all in one place, like all of the questions. Also, the data that you presented tells us a story, right? And I think the story that it tells us, the goals and the strategies that we have address that story that it's speaking to. That's how I read it, because the programs that we have in place, the strategies that we have, is directly speaking to the data that is, that the story that this data tells us, right? In the subgroup categories, which is of interest to me, and I think would directly address the equity question or the equity goal that we have. That is something I would like to deep dive into, but I think it's that would come, once I go through the presentation once again. So, and I did notice, I think the point here is when we generalize the subgroups as opposed to the state, I think that's a very broad generalization. The subgroup categories that you had, which speaks to South Brunswick subgroups versus the New Jersey subgroups.
So those subgroups are state defined. We don't define those. Those are defined for us by the state. What the problem is, the state has not issued their data on their disaggregated subgroups. That's why we don't have it. They did not we cannot do that ourselves. We don't know those numbers.
Right.
The state has chosen at this point to not provide that. We hope they will provide it, but as of right now, we're looking at one static piece of information without a comparative piece.
And I can also share with the board when we share out these slides, there's a link that goes to previous New Jersey assessment demographics, just in case you are interested, like the 2019, you can go back to look at that. So I'll make that available as well.
All right, and I'll ask the rest of my questions via email.
Interesting presentation. I love it. About the subgroups, how is that data collected? Is it self-reported?
That's a great question. Yes, when students register, the demographics are self-reported. We have to report out when a subgroup reaches 10 or more. And so there are some other subgroups that, for example, multi-race hasn't been reported out yet, but expect to see that in a future presentation as we continue to see more families reporting that. The economically disadvantaged is also eligible through free and reduced lunch, and the English language learners obviously is based on that other criteria, and students with disabilities are IEP specific students.
Yeah. The other interesting thing that caught my eye is Algebra 1. Do we have pre-algebra assessments as well?
Yeah, do we have pre-algebra?
Oh.
So we actually, is that your question?
Yeah.
We actually moved, and Bonnie and, where's Kim? Oh, there, all the way over there. I think we moved all of our 7th graders to pre-algebra. So all 7th graders take pre-algebra, but we do have some 7th graders that are taking algebra. So we have algebra taken in 7th grade, probably a few 6th graders, handful.
Yeah.
7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade. So, and of course what you'll see is your higher performers are the students that take it earlier, not later. Students that take algebra earlier perform significantly higher, like light years higher, than students that take algebra at night. So a 9th grade algebra student usually performs significantly lower than a 7th grade algebra student.
That's rather counterintuitive, but yeah, maybe.
It is, except students are starting to get tracked at that time, earlier on in their middle school levels. So the students that have tested in or qualify for higher level math are taking things quicker.
Earlier, yeah.
So their math acuity is just,
They're
that's
good-
something that, yeah.
they're good at
So
it.
it's a weird data, when we start to show that data, it gets kind of funky because of that weirdness and what happens to kids. But just so you know that pre-algebra was moved, was it 2 or 3 years ago that we started moving it? 2 years ago? That we moved all 7th grade to pre-algebra, who are not already in algebra.
Okay. So all pre-algebra students also ended up in Algebra 1 for this year?
So
for
the
2022.
test results, the pre-algebra takes the grade level math. So if you're in pre-algebra, you'll take the NJSLA grade 7, or you'll take the NJSLA grade 6. When you hit the algebra, then that's when you'll take the algebra assessment. And so the results we shared tonight were representative of students in 7, 8, or 9, or even 10 in an Algebra 1 class.
So my question was, the cohort in 2022 that took Algebra 1, it included pretty much all students from pre-algebra the year before?
The cohort for algebra
From year before.
from the year before.
So if a student was in pre-algebra
21.
2 years ago.
Yeah, 21.
last year,
Yeah.
they would have taken the Algebra 1 assessment, correct? Yes. So from pre-algebra, if they advanced to an Algebra 1, they would have been in that cohort.
There's one curious correlation, I'm just trying to understand, because fifth graders who are in advanced math, when COVID hit, they went straight to pre-algebra and then ended up in Algebra 1. So they were the COVID batch. And is there a correlation between the COVID batch and the test results, the drastic drop in the test results that we are seeing? That is something I'm curious.
That's a great question, not one I have the answer for, but you have an answer? Okay. Let Scott go, but I would also ask Dr. Rajagopal, because she knows the placement, like she knows this in her head, she could have rattled it off, but go ahead.
So there was a drop of percentage of students that normally would have tested in.
Yeah.
There was a drop. I like the term the batch. We batched the kids. But there was something to look at there, and that was discussed. There was some heavy discussion. I assume you had it at the middle schools as well, but we had them also at BHL. This topic of what happens with the numbers. The numbers weren't all aligning the way they traditionally align.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons. But at the end of the day, algebra was hit pretty hard by COVID.
Yeah.
And
that's the
there's
story.
some work to do.
Yeah.
Thanks. We good? Okay, so just a couple questions. The special ed group on the NJSLA, I know that they get accommodations, but they're getting the same tests as general population, are they not?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought, which is a problem in and of itself, but that's not for here. The breakout by the like districts, do you have any idea when we're going to receive that information?
Never.
Okay. Is it coming, do we have to get it from the state directly, or can we get it from other districts?
My answer was, while it sounded facetious, was true.
Yeah,
You're not getting.
we're not getting it at
You're
all.
not getting the data.
Great. Okay, so that's an issue. So when we look at closing the gap, right, closing the gap, which is one of the goals that we've had, one of the things that we looked at, I think up here, was overall South Brunswick versus state. But can we look at what we've been doing here in South Brunswick since 2019? So by subgroup, do we see, how are the subgroups doing in closing the gap since 2019 or earlier? And I know it's all depending on which test was taken. But if we could look at 19, 20, 21, 22 by subgroup to see if there's a closing of the gap, I think that would be helpful.
So that is the goal. That's the 2-year goal.
Yeah.
Is to identify all that within both the academics and non-academics across all of those. It's the tail end of the slides, the green slides, all of those different marks. Those are where we're disaggregating the data to identify exactly what you're requesting.
Okay, so we'll see by subgroup the percentages
Of everything.
of everything since 2019?
Um,
We should, because
well,
what
the
I'm
da-
thinking
it's
is,
just a question of how much data we're going to be asked to give.
Right.
How much is practical to obtain in that fashion.
right?
That's all. But
Yeah,
that's
because
our
I
goal.
think it's important to see, are we actually, you're going to see probably a trend line, hopefully, right, of everybody going up. But the question is, does that gap ever close? So that's what I'd like to see if we can look at that. And we wonder why kids are not getting enough sleep, the stress alone of taking all those tests, right? Anyway, do we have any idea yet why the state chose the 750 mark on the graduation rate? I don't even know what it's called.
I'm just going to assume your question is facetious.
No, it's not. Did we get any information as to why they chose that mark? No.
But why 750 is the question.
Because that's what they did with
No,
the park.
I know.
You know.
Huh?
He knows.
Oh, it's arbitrary.
It's arbitrary, okay. And then I have a,
Discussion, and we've determined it's arbitrary.
yeah, I just didn't know if we received any information on that, if, as why they chose that number. Okay. And then I have two questions on the goals. The first goal, oh, wait a minute, actually, on Algebra 1. So we know, we all are concerned about Algebra 1. Are we putting into place some type of teacher assessment, mid-year teacher assessment to see how our kids are performing from our perspective in Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and I, of course, leave it up to the experts, but are we going to be able to see something to see if how they're performing mid-year or so?
It's actually a series of questions that we're addressing related
Okay.
to common assessment. So in other words, where algebra is being taught, how common is the way that we're looking at what kids are doing? So is a ninth grade algebra common assessment occurring in seventh grade? We're just working with our department right now to really establish, like we're really finally able, we don't have this data very long. We're going to start diving in
Okay.
to assess a lot of where we're going and what we're doing, but not just because of that data. We want to look at our own data to see
Right.
what we're looking at with our own common assessments, how grades align to assessment scores. There's a lot. So
Okay.
when we're ready to do more, it's going to come out of the equity work. So it'll be disaggregated, but it's going to be all the work that we need to do to determine what we need to do as a school district to support our students.
Okay. Thank you. And then I have just two questions on the goals. You talked about goal 1, the SEL universal screening. Do you have a timeline yet, and you may not, for the first level of reporting as to what we can expect to see coming out of that?
Not sure. Shouldn't be too long. Anyone know?
We hope to administer it 3 times a year, a fall, winter, spring. And when that information comes back, we'll look to see what would make sense to share out.
Okay.
But what I would share is, since it is a screener, it does allow us to look at students that might need a more in-depth assessment.
Okay.
And then some programming around that. We're really hoping that that will inform some of the groups at the elementary level that our student assistance counselors work with as a level of support, using students and clustering them based on how they perform there.
Okay. Thank you. And the final goal actually has to do with swatting protocols. I just want to get a sense, are we seeing swatting in our district? And if we are, is that part of the HIB report?
It would not be a HIB,
Okay.
but we have not had an experience yet.
We haven't had any.
So, no. But
Okay.
we are not going to wait to have one to be prepared for.
So, okay, so that's what I'm asking. I wanted to make sure we understood that we have or haven't seen it, and we are anticipating that if we ever have it, we will have a protocol in place.
We already have a protocol in place.
Already have it. Okay, thank you. That's it. I yield. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, but I have to go to the bathroom. Can you take a 3-minute break? Okay, I'm sorry. Just had to. We good? Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you for the excellent presentation. And at this time, I'm going to call for a 3-minute break. I need a motion for. So moved by Mr. Nathanson, seconded by Dr. Raj. We are in a 3-minute break.
Well, make sure he's right up there.
Okay. Motion to reconvene, please.
Second.
By Mr. Keener, moved by Mr. Keener, seconded by Ms. Dr. Raj. I'm sorry, Ms. Rogers, I'm sorry. Gotcha, Mrs. Rogers. Gotcha. No, Mrs. Rogers, seconded. So we're going to move right on to the consent agenda. No, we're not there. We're at public comments on agenda items only. Are there any registered speakers?
We don't have any registered speakers.
Okay. At this time, I'm going to read the statement. The Board of Education recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on school matters of community interest. Complete copies of the rules that govern this portion of the meeting are available to the public at the back of the room, or you can obtain an advanced copy by contacting the board office during regular business hours. We reserve the right to limit each speaker to no more than 3 minutes. It is our plan to listen to each member of the public. We will note all questions and comments made. Once all questions and comments from all members of the public are made, the Board of Education will respond, if necessary, to questions or comments in the most timely and efficient manner available. Please consider not repeating comments and questions made by other members of the public. We ask that you state your name, place of residence, or your group affiliation. And since we have no registered speakers, does anyone in the audience wish to speak on agenda items only? No? Okay, so we're going to close this portion and move right along to our consent agenda review walkthrough. Mr. Pawlowski.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have a full list of business office motions to approve. We have a 1.5 approval of a state contract over the bid limit, just for everybody's information. Our 5-year lease on our copiers throughout the district, about 70 copiers, is up. We've decided to move forward and save a little bit of money. We have a new lease purchase agreement that saves the district about $2,000 a month or $24,000 a year over the next 5 years, which equates to about $125,000. That's motion 1.5. We are 1.7. We are moving forward with a superintendent contract. We have field trips, an assortment of assurances, a statement of assurances, which I kind of explained last board meeting, where the Department of Education is looking forward to us assuring that we are board approving some plans for security, safety, and HIB, or harassment, intimidation, and bullying. We have a lot of a lot of related travel for professional development, and that concludes your consent agenda. It's very quick.
Thank you so much. And are there any questions? Dr. Raj?
Thank you. So 1.5, what exactly is gold fax systems and paper cut systems?
Which systems? Goldfax?
Yeah.
So those are the systems that we run through our copier network. We don't have fax machines anymore. All of our faxes go through email. So all of that's run through our copier services. So we took out all of our, what we used to call fax lines or POTS lines throughout the district, saved a ton of money on our phone bill, and ran it all through our copy services. We've been doing that for the last 5 years. So this is all a renewal.
Is
We've
there-
also, as part of this program, part of the lease program, this lease, we've increased our black and white copies prints, or excuse me, we decreased our black and white copy prints because we came to the realization that we weren't using as many that were allotted, and we increased our color copy prints because we realized that we were consistently using too much of the color copy prints. So we adjusted our color copy and our black and white prints to match what the district is using, which also saved us some money in the end.
And what is that paper cut system?
The paper cut system is a system that turns all of our copy machines into a local printer.
Oh.
So from wherever you are in the district, you can print from your desktop or laptop to a copier and go to any copier throughout the district and receive your print.
Oh, okay.
So it's secured, safe, it's connected to your ID number, and we also can utilize that to see how many prints individuals are running on a daily basis, which
Oh.
we don't do. We would never do anything like that.
Okay.
But we could if we wanted to. But we don't. Hope that answers everybody's question.
It's just so curious. People still use fax. Did you receive fax?
We receive, so one of the faxes we receive, the majority of them are from local restaurants having specials for their lunch menus. We always seem to get them from Pierre's, from different restaurants in the area saying, hey, this is our special of the day. But not really, not so much anymore. But when we do get them, they come via email. They don't come through paper anymore.
Yeah. I was just curious because it's so. I have not used a fax machine in I have not received a fax machine.
We haven't used one in 5 years. Any other questions? Good.
Dave, thanks for explaining the savings that we'll be having month on month. Is this a fixed price contract?
Yes,
So irrespective of whether our usage is less or more, we are
it's fixed
we are good
price.
at this.
Correct. Any other questions? Good, Roger?
Dave, you just said that, the black and white copier we've been using less and color we've started using more.
Mhm.
So you changed the dynamics on that. And, I'm just looking at it, it's showing as 0045 for black and white and 0.55 for color.
Mhm.
So with the change, did it actually, impacted so much because 55 cents per page in contrast to 0.0045 for black and white is a big difference.
Yeah, well, again, with the costs that we were incurring in the previous year, we were being charged, those are the prices per copy if you hit the overage, just so you know. So what we did was we decreased and increased our overages or our amounts allotted so that we're ensuring that we're trying to ensure that we don't reach those costs.
Okay, got it.
Right. Any other questions? All set.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Oh, we're not there yet. No. We're not there yet.
Oh, we're not there yet.
We're not there yet.
Oh, we're not there yet.
Are you done? Is that it? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so we're going to move along, and at this time we have nothing under old or new business, so we will now move to action items to approve the consent agenda of tonight's meeting, October 27, 2022. I'd like to ask for a motion, please.
Motion to accept the consent agenda.
Motion by Mr. Keener, seconded
Second.
by
Mrs. Rogers.
Mrs. Rogers. Any question, any discussion? At this time, roll call. Oh,
I do.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to acknowledge to the board, very pleased to know that I will end my career in South Brunswick. The contract puts me to a point where I am going to stay for 5 years, excited to do so, and end my time as an educator in South Brunswick. So this change is Very appreciated. This is an amazing place, and very happy to be able to stay for another 5 years. That'll put me here for 10 full years. And again, I thank this board and our community. So thank you.
Scott, you know we didn't vote yet.
That's what's in here. I just want to say my piece.
Any nays?
So at this time, roll call, please, Mr. Polanski.
Let's hope we get a roll call motion. All right, so Mrs. Deepa Karthik,
Yes.
Mr. Rajakrishnan,
Yes.
Mr. Ray Keener,
Yes.
Mr. Mike Mitchell,
Yes.
Dr. Smitha Raj,
Yes.
Mrs. Lisa Rogers,
Yes.
Mr. Barry Nathanson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Now, are we going to do a separate roll call just for Mr. Fetters?
No,
That's not necessary? Okay.
Yep,
I just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Okay, so now we can move on to board committee and liaison reports. Are there any? Starting with my left. Go ahead.
So I'm going to expand myself as a liaison to the legislative committee. I just want to mention that we're moving into the final phase of election year, and that early voting starts on Saturday, and it is open at Woodlot Park, and so it gives everybody the opportunity to vote early and before the election day for the next couple of weeks. So I just want to remind everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for your report. Is there anyone else? Anyone else? Mrs. Rogers?
Just quick update, curriculum minutes from the last meeting have been placed on the portal. I'm going to ask administration that we make sure that it's renamed to the Education Committee, and then we'll move forward with a new agenda template.
Policy change. Has to go through a policy.
Oh, my gosh, yes, you're right.
not
I
changed, so we
apologize.
do
You're right, I even said that in the minutes, so we do have to go through policy change. Thank you, Scott, I appreciate that.
You're welcome. That's because you thought about the vote, so I had to.
Yeah, sorry about that. And that's it, thank you.
Thank you for your report. Is there anyone else? Okay, at this time, we're going to transition over to the second opportunity for public comments on any topic. Do we have any registered speakers?
None.
Okay, no registered speakers, but there are some in the audience, so please come up. And remember to give your name, your affiliation, and your address, please.
It's even closer than it was last time. Hi, I'm Lisa Garwood. I live in Princeton Walk. I'm speaking tonight out of a deep concern for the education of all of our children in South Brunswick. I've been taught that you do everything you can when you see even potential problems, that silence is complicity. It's not news to anyone that the last few years have brought unparalleled difficulties to the world as a whole, not to mention to our South Brunswick. It's also not news that in difficult times, there are those who look for scapegoats or easy, unrealistic solutions, or strike out in anger for the easiest place to lay blame. It is all too common in difficult times to see those seeking power take advantage of society by fear-mongering, a mentality that creates mob mentality. Shocking, then, that we have seen and heard these shameful behaviors in candidates for our board. I've heard bigotry defended. I've heard statistics from other countries with completely different school and health systems quoted, touted as relevant when they just aren't. I've heard hopes of book banning, a tactic that frightened extremists hope to employ to avoid educating children. Isn't our board supposed to be promoting learning? I've heard claims of radical racial ideology in our curriculum when what is taught is facts. Just because the facts aren't always pleasant doesn't mean they shouldn't be taught. To ignore the past is to repeat it. I've heard cries of South Brunswick pushing a, quote, radical sexual ideology. There's nothing radical in our health curriculum. All one needs to do is read it to find that out. Then it's easy to see the ignorance and manipulation being attempted with these accusations. Also conveniently missing in these same interviews with these candidates is the fact that parents can and have always been able to opt their child out. I know there's a public forum next month. Please attend, where any questions about the sex ed program will be answered. Then you, as a parent, can choose what is best for your child, just like you've always been able to. We have a candidate who has blatantly lied over and over to our board and all of us. This same candidate has wasted funds meant for our children's education. Is this the leadership we want? I sincerely hope that our community will do a bit of their own reading and choose candidates that will help our children learn.
Thank you for your comment, ma'am. Your 3 minutes are up. Thank you.
It's got like 4 lines.
Thank you.
Not hinder their mental and psychological growth. When we have candidates who've been open and honest and have answered questions, not just the ones that promote them, and have relevant experience, including and beyond the classroom, I hope our community will not support fear-mongering. I'm confident that you all agree this behavior is not the example we should be setting for our children.
Thank you.
Good evening, Eric Schlesinger, Monmouth Junction. I'm going to be very quick, very brief. Board, thank you for engaging in the actions that you have today and ratifying our superintendent's contract. And then the other question I have, and I'm not sure if the board can answer, but I will just leave it at this, that I think as we're coming up on election season, as Mr. Nathanson noted, that the community of South Brunswick would probably like an update as to what the status is of the ethics investigation involving the current board president. As I said, I'm not sure if you can say anything, but if the board can update the public, I'm sure we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Hi, my name is Swaroop Ghosh, live at Dean's Pond Crossing, right across the school. Quick question, there were some conversations around a second high school. Any updates?
I have no comment or understanding of a second high school conversation.
Is it going to come up then in any future meetings or as an agenda? Is it possible? What's the way for us as citizens of this town to bring that up? The high school population is one of the largest perhaps in the country.
Just so I can understand it, are you asking if we have plans to build a second high school?
Yes.
Yeah, there are 0 plans at this time to build a high school.
What may be a way to bring that up for a conversation?
Coming here like you did tonight, saying if you're saying you would like a second high school?
Yes.
Okay, this is how you would do that.
Okay, so what will be a next step to bring it up in a formal way?
The district would have to show need for a second high school, and at this point, our demographics don't show a need for a second high school.
And how does that get determined? Is there some criteria for determining a need?
Enrollment, number of students, the population of the current high school, the number of seats available, and the number of seats utilized.
So at present, you don't see that it is a problem or there is a need?
At present, the high school has reduced its number each year for 2, and we have it, our projections are the high school is reducing about 100 students per year, every year.
And the last few years, you said?
It's right down to, we're just over 2,700 students. 5 years ago, we were at just shy of 3,000. And in 4 years, we'll be closer to 2,400 students, to 2,500.
That's the statistics you are seeing.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Are there any more comments before we move forward? Seeing none, we're going to close this portion of the meeting, and we're going to call motion to adjourn. So moved by Mr. Nathanson, seconded by Dr. Raj. All in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.